MBTA Transit Police officers typically carry 45 caliber handguns such as 6-saucer P320s as their primary service weapons. With that being said, officers from, particularly those from the Special Operations section of the MBTA Transit Police, may also carry more high-powered firearms such as assault rifles, shotguns, and etc. Now, while there isn't any specific details or information provided by the MBTA Transit Police on what firearms their officers carry, we can assume some of the firearms. We can assume that certain firearms that they carry based upon, essentially based upon information provided information provided in crime scenes they've conducted in the past. For example, the Boston Marathon bombings, reports from the Boston Marathon bombings, particularly those from the Watertown shootout, proved, because the MBTA Transit Police was involved in the Watertown shootout, that they proved the guns they were carrying, essentially. So while they do not directly admit it, there are ways to finding out. But anyways, when it comes to equipment and non-lethal weapons, MBTA Transit Police officers are known for carrying, generic police equipment, handcuffs, tasers, batons, pepper spray, radios, etc. But when it comes to their uniforms, MBTA Transit Police officers use a wide range of uniforms. The majority of MBTA Transit Police officers are put in on patrol, and patrol MBTA Transit Police officers typically wear blue or navy blue or black uniformed shirts, along with navy blue or black uniformed pants, a peaked hat, a silverish badge, MBTA Transit Police badge attached to their uniform, a tactical vest or bulletproof vest with the words MBTA Transit Police on it. I'm just trying to think of others. A remote speaker microphone attached to the shoulder of their uniform. Trying to think of others. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. When it comes to patrol officers, MBTA, the uniforms worn by MBTA Transit Police officers, or uniformed MBTA Transit Police officers in general, are very similar to that of the Boston Police Department. If you've ever seen a Boston police officer before, or for that matter, any municipal police officer, that is their uniforms are essentially what the uniform of an MBTA Transit Police officer looks like. But when it comes to other officers, such as MBTA Transit Police officers conducting traffic duties, they may carry or they may wear more reflective public safety vests, greenish, yellowish public safety vests, with the words, of course, Transit Police on either side. Officers conducting, officers from, MBTA Transit Police officers from tactical teams, of course, will most likely wear more tactical styled uniforms, and MBTA Transit Police officers from one of the investigative components of the MBTA Transit Police, or should I say, MBTA Transit Police detectives will typically wear, raid jackets, plain clothing, that kind of stuff. But aside from their uniforms, when it comes to when it comes to their vehicles, and MBTA Transit Police officers are typically seen patrolling in Ford Explorers, or Ford, officially known as in police terms, or a police Ford Explorer, which would be known as a Ford Police Interceptor Utility. But that's their most common, I'd say, car you'd see, and I personally know this because I ride the MBTA myself. But that is probably the most common car you'd see. They also drive Ford Police Interceptor sedans, or Interceptor sedans, I think that's what it's called. And then also Crown Victoria, CVPIs, Crown Victoria Police Inspectors. You won't see them as common, but you will also see Chevrolet Suburbans, prisoner transport police vans. They used to have police buses, but they do not have it anymore. This was after the disbanding of the Civil Disturbance Unit of the MBTA Transit Police. It was essentially due to the fact the police vans were the police buses, were very rarely ever used. They were rarely ever used, and they costed a lot of money. Although they did look great, I will admit that. But in addition to that, they are also known, MBTA Transit Police officers are also known to drive Ford pickup trucks, and other specials and other vehicles. That's really it for their firearms, uniforms, equipment, and vehicles. When it comes to the report structure of the MBTA Transit Police, the way it goes, as all report structures of all agencies, is essentially it reports to the agency it falls under. So the MBTA Transit Police, it falls under the MBTA, or Massachusetts Bay Transportation Authority, anyways, it would report to the head of the MBTA, which is the MBTA's CEO. Or I believe it's either the MBTA CEO or the MBTA Board of Directors. Most likely the MBTA Board of Directors, because they are a group of officials overseeing the MBTA, rather than just one single official. Typically, transit police departments report to a board of directors or a board of officials, not just one. But just for supervisory reasons. But anyways, the MBTA Board of Directors, or the MBTA, because it falls under the Massachusetts Department of Transportation, would therefore report to the head of the Massachusetts Department of Transportation, which is the Massachusetts Secretary of Transportation. And as the Massachusetts Department of Transportation falls under the executive branch of the Massachusetts state government, it therefore reports to the head of the executive branch of the Massachusetts state government, which is the governor of Massachusetts. That's the report structure for the MBTA Transit Police. The rank structure of the MBTA Transit Police from high to low is in the following order: Chief, Deputy Chief, Captain, Lieutenant, Sergeant, and finally Officer. The MBTA Transit Police is broken down into divisions, then sections, then units. There are 3 divisions of the MBTA Transit Police. The first is known as the Patrol Operations Division, and is responsible for conducting the majority of the MBTA Transit Police's patrol and field uniformed law enforcement duties. They are typically the ones you see patrolling MBTA property, But anyways, after the Patrol Operations Division, there is number two, the Investigative Services Division. They are responsible for investigating crimes taken on MBTA property. So they provide investigative services to the MBTA Transit Police, and basically during or upon times of need. And lastly, there is the Administrative Services Division. They are responsible for providing administrative services to the MBTA Transit Police. Um, they are composed of officials who help support MBTA Transit Police operations, through administrative operations. But the main two law enforcement divisions, because of course there are three divisions of the MBTA Transit Police, but the main two law enforcement divisions, or field the divisions you see conducting the majority of field operations duties are the patrol operations division and the investigative services division. The administrative services division doesn't really conduct that many law enforcement duties. Rather, they conduct supervisory duties. They administer the MBTA Transit Police. The main two law enforcement divisions, as I said, is the Patrol Operations Division and the Investigative Services Division. But yeah. The MBTA Transit Police works with multiple law enforcement agencies from federal, state to local. At the federal level, they'll work with agencies like the FBI or Federal Bureau of Investigation, particularly on internal corruption cases regarding MBTA employees. For example, just to put out the most generic example out there, let's say there's this very full MBTA bus full of passengers. It's very crowded and it's full of passengers. And when people board, because of how many passengers are on the bus driver tells the people to stand in the front of the bus, even before the yellow standee line. And the problem with that is you're not supposed to stand in front of the yellow standee, or load line, also known as load line. That is actually illegal and is prohibited by federal law. You are not supposed to stand anywhere in front of the yellow load or standee line, because that is for both passenger and driver and bus safety. Doing so is actually prohibited by federal law. So the fact that the bus driver continued driving and told them to stand beyond the yellow standee line would make the bus driver corrupt. And considering the bus driver is working for the MBTA, a government agency, that would be considered government or public corruption. And therefore that would fall under the concurrent jurisdiction of the FBI and the MBTA Transit Police. In addition to that, non-law enforcement officials, such as those from the U.S. Department of Transportation, would also most likely investigate. But that is an example of a federal investigation that would overlap with, or that would be an example of a interagency. That would be an example of collaboration at the federal level when it comes to the MBTA Transit Police. But anyways, on to the state level. At the state level, the MBTA Transit Police will work with agencies like the Massachusetts State Police, for whom they actually share direct concurrent jurisdiction with over MBTA property and matters. With that being said, they are most frequently seen collaborating at the local level or with local law enforcement agencies. The reason for that is because they are the local law enforcement agencies are the majority of they are the local law enforcement officers are the majority of law enforcement officers MBTA transit police officers see on a day-to-day basis. So, for example, um, they'll particularly work with local law enforcement agencies who cover their service, who cover the MBTA's service area. For example, the Boston Police Department, they'll work with them very frequently because the MBTA does cover Boston. So they'll very frequently work with them. They'll especially work with local law enforcement agencies on, you know, joint operations, things like training exercises, neighboring investigations, specialized operations, and etc. And while local law enforcement agencies do not have jurisdiction over MBTA property, the MBTA Transit Police still works with them to enhance interagency coordination. And it's particularly because, let's say, a crime takes place on MBTA property, and another very similar crime takes place just next to that MBTA property. Then obviously the MBTA Transit Police would have to work with local law enforcement agencies in order to find out the similarities between the two crimes and who committed them. So that is really why they work with local law enforcement agencies. But it is important to note that local law enforcement does not have jurisdiction over MBTA property, which I will get into later. But yeah, that's really it for their interagency coordination and collaboration. For the question, how is the MBTA Transit Police a state law enforcement agency? This is a very common question. Many people, I can't tell you how much, but I can't emphasize this enough. Numerous people mistake the MBTA Transit Police for being a municipal law enforcement agency. In fact, some people actually mistake it for being the same as the Boston Police Department. Let me just put it out to you right now. The MBTA's Transit Police is not the same as the Boston Police Department, and it is not a municipal law enforcement agency. The MBTA Transit Police is a state law enforcement agency, as it falls under the Massachusetts Bay Transportation Authority, which is a state agency operating under the Massachusetts Department of Transportation, which is without a doubt a state agency. But anyways, so while the MBTA Transit Police acts and functions like a municipal law enforcement agency, so does its training. It in reality, legally speaking, it's not, okay, because it operates under at the state level. It operates under a state level transportation authority. If we were talking about the let's see, trying to think of a good example. If we were talking about the Washington, D.C. Transit Police, I forgot what it's called, Metropolitan Transit Police, or Washington, D.C. Metropolitan Transportation Authority Police, something like that. That I think that's what it's called, something like that. That would be a municipal law enforcement agency because that transit police department falls under a municipal transit authority because it's operating under the city of Washington, D.C., not a state. Anyways, that is really why it is a state law enforcement agency. So don't ever confuse it for a municipal law enforcement agency because it is not. And in fact, if you look here, getting a bit off topic, but if you look at the license plates of certain police cars, it will give you a hint into whether they are state law enforcement or local law enforcement. What I mean by that is, so typically, but not always, let me put it out to you, not always, but typically, you'll see the MBTA Transit Police officers on their vehicles, their license plate has basically has their patch or logo on it. Again, that is basically, I don't know how to explain this. Um, if you look at the logo of the MBTA Transit Police, you can see the seal. You can see the seal of the state of Massachusetts on it. Now, if you look at the seal of the Massachusetts State Police, which is obviously a state law enforcement agency, you can also see the seal of the state of Massachusetts. That is because both the Massachusetts State Police and the Massachusetts Bay Transportation Authority Police, or MBTA Police, are state law enforcement agencies serving the state of Massachusetts. Municipal law enforcement agencies within Massachusetts, such as the Boston Police Department, have the seal of their municipality, which in the case of the Boston Police Department would be the city of Boston. That's why you see the seal of the city of Boston on it, on the Boston Police Department's logo, not the seal of the state of Massachusetts. Even though they are sworn peace officers in the state of Massachusetts, they operate under the authority of the city of Boston. But anyways, that is a way of telling. Hope that made sense to you. Not that good at explaining things, so yeah. For the question, do municipal police departments, such as the Boston Police Department, have jurisdiction on MBTA property? The answer is no. Generally speaking, municipal police departments, such as the Boston Police Department, do not have jurisdiction on MBTA property. Or what I should say is they do not have inherent jurisdiction on MBTA property. And that's because MBTA property, tying it to what I said earlier, is state property, as the MBTA is a state agency. The Boston Police Department, I don't know how to make this more simple. Municipal law enforcement agencies, they operate at the municipal level. They protect municipal property. They do not have jurisdiction over state or federal property because that's simply the way it is. Okay, they only have jurisdiction over municipal property, or in other words, for the Boston Police Department's case, that would be property owned by the city of Boston. But because the MBTA property is owned by the state of Massachusetts, the only agencies with jurisdiction over it are state law enforcement agencies, and the only current state law enforcement agencies that protect MBTA property or directly protect MBTA property are the Massachusetts State Police and the MBTA Transit Police. So, yeah.